So if I invite you over for dinner, right, and I ask you to sit at the table, we're going to have a perfectly pleasant, polite meal together.
Right. Very civilized.
Exactly. But if I ask you to sit on the table, things have definitely taken a turn.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably asking me to dance, and we're definitely getting thrown out of the restaurant for that.
Absolutely. But, and here's the crazy one, what if I call you and tell you that I'm currently sitting in the table?
Oh, well, in that case, I need to hang up the phone and call 911 immediately.
Right. Because you're literally physically trapped inside solid wood and require emergency surgery. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's just the perfect illustration of how microscopic changes in our language can alter the entire physical geometry of a sentence.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about tiny two-letter words just completely reshaping reality.
And it is the exact reason why anyone trying to master the English language, or, honestly, even native speakers just trying to write a clear professional email, ends up wanting to pull their hair out.
Oh, totally. We treat these connecting words prepositions, right? Like they're just interchangeable filler. We just guess.
Yeah, you just throw them in there and hope it sounds right.
Exactly. You're drafting an email and you type, I am in the bus.
Yeah.
And then you look at it, delete it, I am on the bus, and you just stare at that blinking cursor.
It really feels like you're just throwing darts in the dark, doesn't it?
It really does. And the frustration is so universal because, well, the traditional way we're taught this is fundamentally flawed. We're just handed these dry lists of rote memorization.
Right. You're told to memorize that you ride on a train, but in a car, with zero explanation of the actual underlying logic.
And human cognition, it just rejects abstract memorization without any spatial context. Our brains evolved to navigate physical environments, right? Not spreadsheets of grammar rules.
Exactly. Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are throwing away the dry rule books.
We really are. We're consulting this fascinating conceptual framework called the prepositional compass.
Yeah, and this comes to us from a duo narrators named Rod and his wife Talita.
And they've effectively cracked the code of English prepositions. They took all this murky, confusing grammar and translated it into a physical, three-dimensional map.
It's brilliant, really. What Rod and Talita argue is that prepositions are not arbitrary at all. They're actually governed by strict, albeit invisible, spatial boundaries.
Right. They dictate things like containment, platforms, trajectories, and even motives.
So we're going to test their compass today for you. We'll start by mapping out the three biggest offenders, right? In, on, and at.
Yeah, we're going to look at the psychological boundaries of enclosed spaces, the impermanence of platforms, and I love this part, the precision of dropping digital pins.
And then we'll apply Rod and Talita's ultimate stress test, which is that bizarre table scenario you mentioned at the top of the show.
I can't wait to dig into that. And finally, we'll shift from static space to human intention. We'll look at how the words to and for dictate the mechanics of human connection.
It's a journey. So let's begin with the concept of containment. According to Rod and Talita's framework, the word in is the domain of enclosure and doors.
A physical barrier, like not just a vague area, but a space that can literally be sealed. The source text leans heavily on this visual of a door.
Right. To give examples like a fridge, a room, or a school.
So let's break that down. Think about the physical act of interacting with the refrigerator.
Okay, so you walk up to it, you pull the handle, and you're essentially breaking a seal.
Exactly. You reach across a defined threshold, place an item inside that cold environment, and then shut the door behind it.
The object is completely enveloped by the space. And that is the core defining feature of in. It denotes physical presence within an enclosed boundary.
So when you tell someone you are in the school, you are communicating a very specific structural relationship. You've submitted to the boundaries of the building.
You're inside the walls.
But see, I'm immediately finding a point of friction with this door rule.
Oh.
Well, if in requires structural enclosure and physical boundaries like doors and walls, what happens when I tell you I am in the park or, in the forest? Because there's no door to a forest. I am standing out in the open air, yet the preposition remains the exact same. Does Rod and Talita's compass just break down the moment we go outside?
That's a great question, but it doesn't break down at all. Actually, it reveals how human psychology projects invisible boundaries onto the world around us.
Okay, so how does that work without walls?
Well, you're right that a forest lacks a literal mahogany door.
Mm-hmm.
But cognitively, a forest has a distinct perimeter.
Oh, like where the trees begin and the field ends.
Exactly. When you step across that tree line, your brain registers a threshold being crossed, You are now enveloped by the canopy, the shadows, the ecosystem of the forest.
So the mind just creates an invisible door.
Precisely. And the same applies to a park. A park has property lines, fences, or sometimes just a shift from concrete sidewalk to grass.
Right, and once you cross that perimeter, you're contained within that designated area. So it implies the word in is less about literal architecture and more about a psychological state of being enveloped.
It really is.
Which actually perfectly explains a really fascinating detail from Rod and Toledo's notes. They emphasize that in doesn't just apply to physical containers, it applies to modes and moods.
Yes. The leap from physical architecture to psychological states is where this framework truly shines.
Because if we take the rule that in requires an enclosed space with a boundary, then saying I am in a bad mood treats an emotion like a physical room.
Think about how profound that is.
I was trying to visualize this when reading this source. It's as if a bad mood has 4 walls and a roof. I cross the threshold of anger, the invisible door slams shut behind me, and I am trapped in that emotional container until the feeling passes and I can find the exit.
That is a highly accurate linguistic model, actually. We lack physical boxes for our emotions, so we just borrow the geometry of the physical world to describe them.
Right.
When you're enveloped by a depressive state, or even a surge of joy, it colors your entire environment. You can't see outside of it. You are contained.
Therefore, you are in it.
Exactly.
And what about modes? The text mentions being in flight mode or stealth mode.
Well, consider a smartphone switching to flight mode.
Okay.
The device crosses a functional threshold. All cellular signals are suddenly blocked. The phone is now operating entirely within a closed, isolated container of specific rules.
It's cordoned off from the wider network. The boundaries are strictly set.
Right. So the mental test for you, the listener, whether you're writing an essay or just trying to describe a technical process, is to test for containment.
If you can conceptually shut a door around the subject, you're in.
Exactly. Whether it's placing milk in a fridge, stepping past the tree line of a forest, or putting a video game character into stealth mode, you are enveloped. That is the geometry of in.
Okay, so we definitely understand the box. We understand how to recognize a container. But, the problem with containment is that it's absolute.
How do you mean?
You are either inside the walls or you aren't. And a huge portion of human existence happens out in the open, where we are resting on things, touching things, but not enveloped by them.
Right. A lot of life happens outside the box.
Exactly. So if we remove the walls and shatter the enclosure, we arrive at the second point on Rod and Toledo's compass, which is on.
On is the platform of the temporary.
And the rules laid out for on in the source material are highly specific. Rod and Toledo state that it represents temporary states, removable things, platforms, the 24-hour rule, and scenarios where there is more than one of the kind.
It sounds like a lot of disparate criteria, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a lot to juggle.
They seem disparate,
Yeah.
but they are all anchored by a single spatial reality, which is impermanence. Let's start with the most literal visual they offer, the platform.
Right, paint that picture for us. How does a platform differ from a container?
Imagine a stage in an auditorium. You walk up the steps and stand up on the wooden boards. The stage supports your weight. It elevates you. But critically, there's nothing wrapping around your sides or above your head.
Right, you're entirely exposed to the rest of the room.
Exactly. Your relationship to that wooden structure is fundamentally transient. You can step off just as easily as you stepped up.
It's just a surface without walls. The classic example they use is a book on a desk. The desk is the platform. The book rests there, but it's a completely removable object.
Yes, picking up the book doesn't alter the book, and it certainly doesn't destroy the desk.
Contrast that with an object in a container. Like if you embed something inside a solid structure, removing it requires force or alteration.
Right, but on dictates a casual, temporary resting state.
I keep picturing a sticky note attached to a computer monitor.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
It exists solely to be peeled away eventually. It's just a temporary visitor to that surface.
The sticky note is the perfect embodiment of on. It possesses zero structural permanence. And this concept of impermanence leads us directly into what Rod and Toledo referred to as the 24-hour rule.
This part is wild.
It really is. This is where the spatial geometry is applied to the abstract concept of time.
I found this rule incredibly thought-provoking, but also, honestly, slightly confusing at first. The text says we use on for days and dates. On Monday, On the 4th of July.
Right.
And the rationale is that a day is a temporary state, a fleeting 24-hour platform that resets.
That is the mechanism, yes.
But I need to push back here for a second.
Go for it.
If on is used because a day is temporary, why do we say we will do something in a minute?
No.
I mean, a minute is vastly more temporary than a day. It's only 60 seconds. If impermanence is the rule, shouldn't a minute be a platform? Why does the brain treat a minute as a box, but a day as a stage?
That is a phenomenal question, and it really strikes at the core of how humans perceive the utility of time. You have to look at how we actually occupy these blocks of time.
Okay, how do we occupy them differently?
Well, a minute, an hour, a month, a year, we perceive these as containers of duration. When someone says, I will be there in a minute, they are describing a boundary.
They're contained within that 60-second waiting period.
Exactly. Trapped until the timer expires and the door opens. We live inside years, too. In 2024, it's a massive enclosure enveloping all our actions.
So why is a day different?
Because a day operates cyclically, almost like a moving sidewalk. Monday arrives, you step onto the platform of Monday, you ride it for 24 hours, and then Tuesday slides into place, and you step onto that.
Oh, wow. We name our days, we stand upon them to perform our daily routines.
Yes. They act as the surface beneath our schedule, rather than a volume of time we are trapped within.
That completely shifts the perspective. So we are trapped inside a minute, but we ride a day.
Precisely. And this idea of riding a temporary platform connects beautifully to Rod and Toleda's final rule for on, which dictates we use it when there's more than one of the kind.
Which brings us to the great transit debate.
Yes, everyone's favorite preposition trap.
Right. Why do I say I am in a car, but on a bus, on a train, and on a plane? I mean, think about a plane. I am enclosed inside a giant metal tube flying at 30,000 feet. It has heavy locking doors. By all the rules of Section 1, I should definitely be in the plane.
From a purely structural standpoint, yes, you are enclosed, absolutely.
Yeah.
But human language prioritizes the function of the space over its physical architecture.
Okay, so what is the functional difference between your personal car and a commercial airliner?
Well, think about ownership, control. In your car, you are the sole occupant, or at least the master of that domain, right?
Yeah, the car goes where I tell it to go.
And the airliner.
The airliner is flying to Chicago whether I am sitting in seat 12B or not.
Exactly. A plane, a train, a bus. These are mass transit platforms. They operate on rigid, predetermined schedules.
They are public spaces designed for temporary occupancy.
Right. You board, you ride, you disembark. And crucially referencing Rod and Toleda's rule, there is more than one of the kind. Every passenger is interchangeable.
If I miss the flight, another passenger just takes my seat.
Exactly. You do not own the container. You're merely renting a spot on a moving stage.
So the psychology of impermanence actually overrides the physical reality of the metal walls. Because I am easily replaced, because my presence is fleeting, my brain categorizes the airplane as a platform, not a room. Therefore, I am on the plane.
The rules of the compass are remarkably consistent once you understand those hidden cognitive variables. In requires personal envelopment. On requires temporary support.
Okay, so we have the enclosed box and we have the flat surface. But both of those prepositions in and on require physical interaction, right?
What do you mean?
Well, you are either enveloped by the box or you are touching the surface of the platform. What happens when distance is introduced?
Ah, yes.
What if I am not touching the object, but I need to guide you toward it? If we zoom out to a bird's eye view, we arrive at the third cardinal direction on the compass.
At is the targeting reticle. It strips away all the complex psychology of containment and impermanence and just replaces it with pure geographic coordinates.
Rod and Toleda describe at as a specific point of reference. And they made a vital distinction that listeners really need to internalize here. Physically at often translates to being in front of something rather than being physically inside it.
Yes, it is entirely non-committal regarding physical boundaries. When you use at, you're establishing a point of intersection on a map, but you are deliberately withholding information about your structural relationship to that location.
The example provided in the source material is perfect for this. At the hotel.
Consider the scenario. You arrive in a new city and you text a colleague, I am at the hotel. What have you actually communicated to them?
I've just dropped a pin on the GPS. I provided the exact street intersection. My colleague now knows the precise geographic coordinates of my location.
But what haven't you told them?
I haven't told them my physical state of containment at all. The little red dropped pin on the map app just says, look at this building.
Right. It does not tell my colleague if I am standing on the sidewalk staring at the revolving door, or if I am sitting in the lobby having a coffee, or, if I've gone upstairs, crossed the threshold of room 402 and locked myself inside the bathroom.
At covers all of this possibilities.
It's the great equalizer of prepositions.
It really is. It focuses the listener's attention on the destination itself, usually from an external perspective, like facing the building from the street. It's incredibly efficient for a rendezvous.
Right. Meet me at the theater. The speaker doesn't need to clarify if they're standing on the curb or waiting by the popcorn stand inside. The point of reference is established.
Exactly.
But let's extrapolate this rule for a second, because we spend a massive amount of our modern lives not at physical buildings, but at digital locations.
Oh, that's a great point.
How does Rod and Toleda's targeting reticle apply to the internet? Do I say I am in a website, on a website, or at a website?
Well, just apply the rules of the compass. A website doesn't have a physical door that envelops you, so in feels unnatural.
Is a website a temporary platform that holds multiple replaceable items?
Yes.
Which is why we often say on a website, just like we say on a page. But think about a specific web address, a URL, a uniform resource locator.
A locator, it's a coordinate.
Exactly. When you are directing someone to a specific digital destination, you give them the coordinates.
Yeah.
You tell them to look at google.com. You send an email to someone at their specific domain address.
Wow.
At serves the exact same function in digital space as it does in physical space.
It is the targeting reticle.
Okay, so in is the box, on is the stage, at is the dropped pin. We have successfully mapped the static architecture of the English language.
We have.
But knowing these definitions in isolation is completely different from understanding how violently they clash when they're applied to the same object.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of Rod and Toleda's spatial argument. It is an exercise in extreme consequence.
Yes. For anyone listening, if you have ever struggled to remember the difference between these three words, this next section is going to permanently brand the solution into your memory. It's unforgettable.
I call it the table matrix. The source material provides a single object, a table, and applies all three prepositions to it to demonstrate the absurdly different realities they create.
It's a brilliant pedagogical tool. By holding the object constant and shifting only the preposition, the structural rules are just laid bare. Let's walk through it. Scenario 1. You are at the table.
Okay, applying our rule for at the targeting reticle, the point of reference, being in front of something to be at the table, means I've pulled up a chair and I am sitting correctly in front of the wood.
Right. Your plate is on the surface, but your body is anchored at the coordinates of the furniture.
A completely civil, expected social interaction. I've established my position relative to the object.
Perfect. Now, scenario 2. Shift the preposition. You are on the table.
Okay, applying the rule for on the temporary platform, the stage, if I am on the table, my body is physically resting upon the surface of the wood. I'm elevated. There are no walls around me. I am fully exposed.
And as Rod and Toleda acutely point out, what is the real-world consequence of treating a dining room table as a temporary stage?
You are going to get expelled from school or thrown out of the restaurant by a very angry manager. You're literally dancing on the furniture. You violated the social contract of the space by utilizing it as a platform.
The visual is stark. Polite dining versus rebellious expulsion.
It's hilarious.
But the true genius of the exercise is the final scenario. Scenario 3. You tell someone you are in the table.
Applying the rule for in containment, physical envelopment, boundaries to be in the table means my physical form is completely embedded within the cellular structure of the mahogany.
Yes.
I am Han Solo frozen in carbonite, but inside a piece of dining room furniture.
And what is the consequence dictated by the source material for this?
You need immediate emergency surgery with a chainsaw to extract you from the wood.
It is wondrously absurd. But there's a very deep neurological reason why Rod and Toleda use this specific chaotic example.
Because it sticks.
Yes. Human memory is highly selective. If you try to memorize the phrase, use in for volume and on for surface, the brain flags it as low-priority abstract data and just discards it within hours.
Because it's boring. There are no stakes to that rule.
Exactly. But the brain is hardwired to remember extreme consequences, physical danger, and social embarrassment.
Right?
By attaching surgery, expulsion, and polite dining to grammatical choices, they transform a boring linguistic rule into a vivid, high-stakes spatial narrative.
It just creates an infallible alarm system. Imagine you're writing a professional email to your boss, right? Setting up a lunch meeting. Your finger hovers over the keyboard. You're about to type, "I will meet you in the table."
Oh, no.
Your brain immediately flashes to the visual of a surgical team wielding chainsaws in the middle of a restaurant.
The alarm bells ring.
You delete it instantly. You type, "I will meet you at the table." Problem solved.
The table matrix literally forces you to visualize the geometry before you speak.
It really is unforgettable. But it's also completely static. Up until this point in our deep dive, we have been frozen in time.
True. We've been trapped in boxes, standing on platforms, or dropping pins on a map.
But human existence isn't static. We're constantly moving, connecting, and acting with intent. So how does the compass navigate action?
That requires us to shift from the geometry of space to the geometry of intention. We move to the final two prepositions highlighted in Rod and Toleda's text, to and for.
These two are notorious. They trip up language learners constantly because they both seem to point toward a goal.
They do, on the surface.
But according to the compass, they serve vastly different mechanical functions. The source states that to denotes time, movement, and personal relations or connections. For, on the other hand, denotes benefits, motives, and reasons.
If in, on, and at are the map, then to and for are the arrow and the engine.
Oh, I love that. Let's break down that metaphor. Start with the arrow.
To tracks the physical or temporal trajectory. It is the arrow flying through the air toward a destination. If you say, "I am traveling to London," the word to maps the movement. It provides the direction of the action. You are the arrow. London is the target.
So to is the where. What is the engine?
For is the invisible engine powering the action. It dictates the underlying motive, the reason the action was initiated, or the recipient of the benefit. It is the why.
Okay, let me test this because I see a massive potential trap here regarding human connection.
Right, lay it on me.
Rod and Toleda's notes explicitly state that to handles personal relations and connections. But if I buy a gift, I say, "I bought this gift for you." That is a personal connection. Why is the engine for used there instead of the arrow to?
Look closer at the mechanics of the action. When you buy a gift for someone, the act of purchasing is the engine. The motive driving your purchase is their benefit.
Right.
You haven't connected with them physically yet. You have merely performed an action motivated by their existence.
So when I actually hand them the box,
Then you give the gift to them. The object physically travels across the space between you. The directional link, the arrow, is finally established.
that is a crucial distinction. Let me try another one. Let's say I have a problem with customer service. I could say, "I will speak to the manager." Or I could say, "I will speak to the manager for you."
Analyze the geometry of that sentence based on the compass.
Okay, I will speak to the manager. My words are the arrows. I am aiming them at the manager. That establishes the directional connection. But if I add "for you," I am revealing the engine.
Yes.
The reason I am firing those arrows at the manager is to benefit you.
The distinction is flawless. To builds the bridge. For explains why the bridge was built.
It is so satisfying when the fog clears like that. And Rod and Toledo don't just leave us with metaphors. They provide a very practical structural cheat code in the text specifically for navigating for.
Yes, this is incredibly helpful.
They state that for is typically followed by one of two structural rules. For plus nouns or for plus verb plus ing.
Let's look at how that cheat code operates in everyday speech.
Walk me through the first half. For plus noun.
If the motive of your action is a distinct object, event, or person, you pair the engine with the noun. I am studying for the exam.
Got it.
Your studying is the action. What is the motive? The exam, a noun. I am saving money for a car. The car is the noun driving the savings.
And what about the second half? For plus verb plus ing.
This is used when the motive is an ongoing action or purpose. It is incredibly useful for describing the utility of objects.
Like tools.
Exactly. If someone hands you a bizarre kitchen gadget and asks what it does, you use this formula to explain its purpose. This tool is used for opening bottles. Opening is the verb with the ing suffix. It perfectly describes the motive of the tool's design.
Let's put you, the listener, in a hypothetical scenario to test this in real time. Imagine you are holding a physical key. Someone points at it and asks, what is the motive of that object? Using the cheat code, you need for plus verb plus ing. You would say this key is for unlocking the door. But if we shift from the motive of the key to the physical trajectory of using it,
Then the engine shuts off, The arrow takes over, and we return to our spatial map. You move the key to the lock, you slide the metal in the lock, crossing the threshold of the mechanism.
It's a seamless web. You can actually weave all 5 of Rod and Toledo's prepositions into a single continuous narrative of geometry and intention.
Let's hear it. Put it all together.
Okay, you are an arrow firing through life. You travel to a city. That is your trajectory, your movement. You are traveling there for a job interview. That is your engine, your motive. You arrive at the building, and your GPS drops a pin. You are now standing at the front door, the point of reference facing the street.
Tracking perfectly so far.
You push the handle, cross the threshold, and walk into the lobby, enveloped by the architecture. And finally, you walk up to the reception desk and place your resume on the counter, resting it upon a temporary platform. 2, 4. At, in, on.
It's brilliant. It proves that English grammar, despite its reputation for chaos, possesses an underlying rigorous physical logic.
It's not just a list of random rules to be memorized. It is a 3-dimensional map to be navigated. Before we wrap up this deep dive, let's do a rapid-fire recap of Rod and Toledo's prepositional compass, just to cement the coordinates for you.
The foundation of the compass is in. It is the domain of containment. It requires a boundary, a door, or a threshold. You use it when an object or a person is physically or psychologically enveloped, whether that is a carton of milk in a fridge, a hiker in a forest, or a human mind in a depressive mood.
Next is on, the platform of the temporary. It applies to surfaces without enclosing walls. It dictates impermanence, which is why we use it for removable objects like a book on a desk, fleeting 24-hour periods like on Monday, and mass transit systems where occupants are easily replaced, like being on a train.
Then we zoom out to at, the targeting reticle. It provides specific geographic coordinates or digital locators without committing to physical boundaries. It means in front of or at the point of. It is the dropped pin on the map.
And we lock those 3 spatial concepts together with the unforgettable table matrix, sitting politely at the table in front of it, dancing rebelliously on the table and getting expelled, and being physically embedded in the solid wood of the table, requiring emergency chainsaw surgery.
Finally, we navigate intention with 2 and 4. 2 is the arrow tracking trajectory movement and the bridge of personal connection. 4 is the engine driving the motive, the reason, and the recipient of the benefit, easily verified by the cheat code of pairing it with a noun or an ing verb.
Rod and Toledo's work is a masterclass in making the invisible visible. But as we close this deep dive, there is a profound, almost philosophical implication to all this structural geometry that I want you to mull over.
When you realize that every sentence is an architectural blueprint, it really forces you to question the relationship between language and perception.
Exactly. I mean, if mastering these tiny, seemingly insignificant prepositions completely changes the physical geometry of how we describe our world, if switching a single vowel from in to on changes you from being trapped inside solid wood to dancing on a platform, it raises a monumental question. Do these tiny words merely reflect our physical reality, or do they actively shape the boundaries of how we experience space and human connection?
It is the core of linguistic relativity. Are you simply describing the box you find yourself in? Or does the act of using the word in literally construct the walls of the box in your own mind?
Think about human relationships. If I tell myself I am in a relationship versus on a break, the language is literally defining the structural integrity of my emotional life.
Wow.
One implies a boundary I have committed to, enveloped within. The other implies a temporary, highly precarious platform I could step off at any moment.
You are building invisible scaffolding around yourself with every single sentence.
So, tomorrow morning, when you open your laptop to draft an email, or when you are sitting across from a friend telling a story, just pause for a second. Ask yourself, what invisible boxes and temporary platforms are you building around yourself just by choosing a 2-letter word? Are you dropping a pin, firing an arrow, or turning on an engine? You aren't just speaking. You are an architect of space. Choose your coordinates wisely.
Hello, it's Rod's friend here, Gino from Real Everyday English. Sorry for interrupting your video. I just want to make a quick recommendation that you subscribe to Rodrigo's channel. He's an amazing guy. He's so humble. He's so dedicated. And he creates absolutely fantastic content. See you people soon. Bye-bye. God bless.